I stirred my iced tea slowly, watching the condensation slide down the glass while Mom scrolled through her phone with the satisfied expression of someone who just accomplished something important. Across the table, my sister Ashley was doing her usual country club performance. Perfectly styled hair, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, recounting her latest influencer triumph. She was pitching herself to the charity gala committee, desperate to secure a venue to impress a mysterious angel donor. I sat there in my gray hoodie and worn denim, looking less like a daughter and more like a glitch in their perfect picture. Mom introduced me simply as Thea, followed by a dismissive wave and the phrase, "She is still finding her direction." I did not correct her. I just watched the ice melt. Before we see what Mom accomplished, drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. I would love to know who is part of our community. Oh, speaking of direction, Mom said, her voice brightening with that terrifying, chirpy tone she used when she was about to bulldoze someone's boundaries. She set her phone down on the linen tablecloth, screen facing up. I have wonderful news, Thea. I solved your housing crisis. I stopped stirring. I did not know I had a housing crisis. Of course you do, darling. Living in that industrial zone. It is unsafe. It is dirty. It is frankly embarrassing for the family. She leaned forward, lowering her voice to a stage whisper that was meant to be heard by the entire committee. So I took matters into my own hands. I hired a locksmith this morning. My hand tightened around the glass. You what? An emergency locksmith, she clarified, beaming. I told him I was your mother and I was worried about your safety. He let me right in. I have already had the locks changed, so do not worry about those old keys. And the best part? I found someone to sublet it. A nice young intern from your father's firm. He needs a cheap place to stay, and I figured since you are clearly drowning financially, moving back home would be a relief. Ashley chimed in, adjusting her sunglasses. It is really for the best, Thea. That place is a dump. I mean, exposed brick is one thing, but living in a literal factory? It is tragic. Mom is just trying to rescue you. The table went quiet. The committee members looked at me with pity. Poor Thea. The failure. The charity case. I looked at them. Really looked at them. Ashley was wearing a limited edition handbag that I knew she rented by the week. Mom was wearing a brooch that I knew she had bought on credit. They were surrounded by the trappings of wealth. The club membership, the leased cars, the relentless social climbing. But it was all surface. It was all noise. In my head, a mental ledger opened up. Asset, Ashley's handbag. Value $2,000 retail. Cost to her $200 a week. Equity 0. Asset, Mom's social standing. Value, intangible. Cost, her integrity. Equity, negative. They were drowning in the effort to appear buoyant. They needed me to be small because my smallness made them feel big. They were obsessed with having the right clothes, the right address, the right friends. They did not understand being. If I was the project, then Mom got to be the savior. If I was the failure, then Ashley got to be the success. They were not rescuing me. They were harvesting me for their own self-esteem. Mom was still smiling, waiting for my gratitude. I packed your essentials, she said. The movers are taking the rest to storage tomorrow. You can stay in your old room until you get back on your feet. She had broken into my home. She had violated my sanctuary. She had touched my servers. And she called it love. I did not scream. I did not flip the table. That would be emotional. That would be messy. That would be exactly what they expected from the unstable, wayward daughter. Instead, I felt a cold, clean clarity wash over me. It was the feeling of a complex algorithm finally resolving to a single, inevitable output. Thank you for telling me, I said. My voice was level. Excuse me for a moment. I picked up my phone and stood up. I did not walk to the bathroom to cry. I walked to the terrace, overlooking the manicured golf course. I scrolled past my contacts until I found the name I needed. Matthew. Head of security. I typed 2 words. Protocol read. Send. I watched the message deliver. I watched the read receipt appear. It was not just a text. It was an execution command. While I waited for the confirmation, I thought about the dump Mom hated so much. That factory was not just where I slept. It was where I built my first server farm. It was where I spent 3 years sleeping on a futon under a desk, coding until my eyes burned, eating instant noodles because every spare dollar went into bandwidth and cooling systems. I remembered the nights when the power grid flickered and I had to manually reset the breakers in the basement, terrified I would lose months of work. I remembered the meetings with investors who looked at my hoodie and saw a kid, until I opened my laptop and showed them the architecture of a platform that would revolutionize data compression. I remembered the day the acquisition offer came through. $42 million. I did not buy a yacht. I did not buy a mansion in the hills. I bought the factory. I bought the entire industrial district. I bought the silence. I poured that money back into the grid, into green tech, into an incubator for kids who looked like me, kids in hoodies who had big ideas and empty pockets. That dump was the nerve center of a holding company that quietly owned significant portions of the city's infrastructure. It was my fortress. And Angela had just breached the perimeter. My phone buzzed. Protocol executed. Perimeter secured. Intruder alert logged. I put the phone back in my pocket and walked back to the table. They were still talking, laughing about something Ashley had said. They looked so comfortable, so secure in their narrative. Mom looked up as I sat down. Did you call the movers? You really should thank me, Thea. Not many mothers would do this much for a struggling child. I made a call, I said. But not to the movers. Before she could ask who, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and frowned. Unknown number. Probably a telemarketer. She swiped it to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Persistent. Ashley laughed. Answer it, Mom. Put it on speaker. Let us mess with them. Mom sighed, the martyr to the end. She tapped the green button and set the phone on the table, right next to the crystal vase of hydrangeas. Hello? This is Angela. A deep, calm voice filled the air. Ms. Angela? This is Matthew, head of security for the industrial district. Mom's face lit up. She looked around the table, beaming. Oh, the security guard. Yes, hello. I suppose you are calling to thank me for finding a tenant for Unit 1. I know the neighborhood is a bit rough, but do not worry, I am cleaning up the mess. She winked at the committee members. See? Confidence. Ma'am, Matthew said. His voice did not waver. It was not friendly. It was professional. It was lethal. I am calling to inform you that you have triggered a Tier 1 security breach. You are currently in possession of unauthorized keys to a secure facility. Mom laughed, a nervous, tinkling sound. Secure facility? It is a loft apartment. And I am the tenant's mother. I am helping her. I understand your perspective, ma'am. However, I cannot allow you to lease that property. And why not? Mom demanded, her voice getting sharper. My daughter rents that unit. She is drowning financially. I am stepping in. You cannot lease the property, Matthew said, because the owner does not wish to lease it. The owner? Mom scoffed. Please. Some absentee slumlord? I am doing him a favor. Put him on the phone. I will explain the situation. That will not be necessary, ma'am. Why? Because the owner is currently sitting across the table from you. The silence that followed was not just quiet. It was a vacuum. It sucked the air out of the room. The clinking of silverware stopped. The committee members froze, their wine glasses halfway to their mouths. Mom blinked. Her brain was trying to process data that did not fit her operating system. What? She whispered. Thea, Matthew said. Miss Thea bought the entire industrial park 4 years ago. The purchase price was $15 million. She does not rent Unit 1, ma'am. She owns the block. I picked up my iced tea again. I took a sip. Mom stared at the phone. Then she stared at me. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was like watching a computer crash in real time. The blue screen of death, right there on her face. That is not true, she stammered. Thea? Tell him he is lying. You work freelance. You fix computers. I do fix computers, I said softly. I fix the one that manages the city's traffic grid, and the one that optimizes the port logistics, and the one that secured the series of funding for the incubator I run downstairs. I leaned forward. I did not tell you because I knew this would happen. You measure success by how loud it is. I measure it by what it controls. Ashley let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. You own a factory? What is it, a sweatshop? It is a green tech campus, I corrected. And it is currently valued at $28 million. Mom was not looking at me anymore. She was looking at the committee members. She was looking at her reflection in the silverware. She was watching her self-image disintegrate. She did not apologize. She did not say, wow. She did not say, I am proud. She got angry. Her face flushed a deep, ugly red. You lied to me, she hissed. You let me make a fool of myself. You let me worry about you. Do you have any idea how selfish that is? Humiliating your own mother in front of these people? It was fascinating, really. In psychology, they call it a narcissistic injury. When reality conflicts with a narcissist's grandiose self-image, they do not adjust their image. They attack reality. She could not process a world where I was successful and she was wrong. In her narrative, she was the benevolent matriarch swooping in to save the wayward child. That role gave her purpose. It gave her superiority. My success did not just contradict that story, it annihilated it. If I was not the failure, then she was not the savior. And if she was not the savior, who was she? Just a woman with maxed out credit cards and a daughter she did not actually know. So, in her mind, I had done this to her. My success was not an achievement. It was a weapon I had forged specifically to hurt her feelings. I did not lie, I said. I just did not correct your assumptions. You needed me to be a failure so you could be the hero. I just let you play the role. I demand an apology, she said, her voice shaking. Right now. For the deception. For the disrespect. The committee members looked down at their plates, desperately wishing they were anywhere else. They had come for a light lunch and a venue tour, and instead, they were witnessing a psychological autopsy. Ashley jumped in, sensing the ship was sinking and trying to find a life raft. She adjusted her sunglasses, desperate to reclaim the high ground. Yeah, Thea. God, you are so manipulative. So you have some money. Big deal. You still live in a warehouse. You probably sleep on a cot. She let out a scoff, turning to Mrs. Galloway. I mean, look at her. She looks like she works IT support. She turned back to me, her lip curling. At least I live at the Onyx. That is real luxury. Doorman, concierge, marble floors. That is class. Not some dusty brick pile you bought to play landlord. The Onyx. I smiled. It was a small, tight smile. I reached into my bag and pulled out my iPad. The movement was slow, deliberate. I tapped the screen a few times, bringing up the portfolio dashboard. The Onyx is a beautiful building, I agreed. Mid-century modern. Great location. Terrible debt structure. What would you know about it? Ashley sneered, though her voice wavered slightly. She was sensing a shift in the air pressure, the way animals sense a storm before the rain starts. I know that the developer overleveraged himself 3 years ago, I said, reading from the screen. I know he missed his balloon payment last week. And I know that my holding company acquired the distressed note this morning at 9 in the morning. I slid the iPad across the table. It spun smoothly on the linen tablecloth and stopped directly in front of her. It showed the deed transfer. The timestamp was 3 hours ago. Actually, Ashley, I said, meeting her eyes over the rim of her designer sunglasses. You are right. The Onyx is a great asset. That is why I bought the debt. Technically, I am your landlord now. Ashley stared at the screen. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like a fish gasping on a dock. I reached over and swiped a finger across the screen, scrolling down to the tenant ledger. And according to this, you are 3 months behind on rent. The color drained from her face faster than the blood from a cut. The sunglasses slid down her nose, revealing eyes wide with genuine panic. That is, the bank transfer was bounced. I finished. Twice. I looked at Mom. She was frozen, her hand clutching her pearls in a gesture that would have been comical if it was not so pathetic. You wanted to rescue someone today, Angela, I said softly. You picked the wrong daughter. I own the roof over her head. And unless that rent is paid by close of business today, my property manager, the same one you yelled at, is going to be posting an eviction notice on her marble door. The charity committee was silent. Absolutely silent. They were looking at Angela and Ashley not as the prominent family they pretended to be, but as frauds. The illusion was gone. The empty wallet was exposed. For years, they had made me feel small because I did not play their game. They did not realize that while they were playing dress-up, I was buying the store. But, Mom whispered, but you're just Thea. Yes, I said. Just Thea. I took my iPad back and slipped it into my bag. The power dynamic had not just flipped. It had evaporated. They were not antagonists anymore. They were just bad investments. I stood up. I did not slam the chair. I just stood. The sound of the chair legs scraping against the floor was the only noise in the room. I think we are done here, I said. I looked at the committee chairwoman, a woman named Mrs. Galloway. She was staring at me with wide eyes, her fork suspended halfway to her mouth. Mrs. Galloway, I said. I believe you were hoping to secure the angel donor for your gala today. You were told she values discretion above all else. She nodded dumbly. Yes, we were told she is very private. She is, I said. I am her. Gasps. Literal, audible gasps rippled around the table. Mom looked like she was going to be sick. I was prepared to write a check for $2 million to your initiative, I continued, my voice steady. Because I believe in education. But I also believe in integrity. And I cannot partner with an organization that entertains this kind of performative charity while ignoring the substance right in front of them. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my black card, the real one, made of anodized titanium. I placed it gently on the check tray in the center of the table. Lunch is on me, I said. Consider it a severance package for our relationship. I turned and walked away. I did not look back. I did not need to. I knew exactly what was happening behind me. The whispering. The panic. The crumbling of the facade. I could feel their eyes on my back, but for the first time in my life, their gaze did not feel heavy. It felt irrelevant. I walked out of the club, past the valets parking the Bentleys and the Mercedes. I walked to the far end of the lot where my electric bike was chained to a post. I unlocked it, put on my helmet, and rode away. The wind felt good. It felt like truth. I rode back to the industrial district. Back to the dump. Except it was not a dump. As I rolled through the gates, I saw it for what it truly was. The solar panels glinting on the roofs. The community garden my team had planted in the old loading bay. The lights burning in the windows where brilliant minds were solving problems that actually mattered. I parked my bike and walked into the lobby. Matthew was there at the desk. He gave me a sharp nod. Situation resolved, boss? Resolved, I said. Clear the logs. I took the elevator up to the penthouse. My sanctuary. I walked in. It was quiet. The locks were new. Matthew had already sent a team to rekey it back to my specs. The air smelled like sage and ozone. I went to my desk and opened my laptop. I pulled up my personal budget. There was a line item I had carried for years, a mental expense labeled family approval. It had cost me years of stress, silence, and shrinking. I highlighted the row. Delete. I did not feel lonely. I felt efficient. I looked out the window at the city's skyline. I owned a piece of that view. Not because I inherited it, not because I married it, but because I built it. This was the justice of the sower. While they were busy playing games of appearance, frantically arranging flowers and renting handbags to look successful, I had been planting seeds. They were harvesting validation. I was harvesting reality. They played the game of seeming. I played the game of being. And the reality was, I did not just win the fight. I built the arena. My phone buzzed. A text from Ashley. Please don't evict me. I did not reply. I did not need to. The lease agreement was clear, and business was business. I turned back to my screen. I had a meeting with a solar startup in 10 minutes. We were going to figure out how to bring cheap energy to rural schools. That was the work. That was the legacy. The rest? The rest was just noise. Thea realized that silence is not weakness. It is the sound of building an empire while others just make noise. If you have ever had to build in silence while the world doubted you, share the story. And tell me in the comments, what is one thing you are building right now that no one knows about yet?